Hi, welcome to the Pursuit of Truth. I just wanted to continue with that last podcast, talking about the upload that Patrick Jane put on YouTube. It was actually a mirror of Truth Stream Media's documentary. I think it's them who made it, but they put it on there. It was The Minds of Men. It wasn't Agenda 21. I don't know why I always think of that one. It's actually MK Ultra and CIA mind control programs, and it went through lots of. It's a 3-hour long documentary. It is really long, but it is really, really interesting. And assuming that there's a lot of facts in there that can be verified, then it's really scary what you're listening to, because especially when you consider, like when we consider, say, Goering or Goebbels, who did the experiments on human beings during the Nazi regime, to use that word. People think, oh yeah, they were terrible, look at the things they did. But when you realize it was the CIA that did almost similar kinds of experiments on human beings, then who is meant to be the white hats, the good guys, as it were, then you realize, well, what else has everyone else been up to? And it makes you question everything in that sense. And I know there'd be maybe some of it isn't validated or is conspiratorial, to use that word, but I know a lot of it has been verified, and there are documents that they found, which is mentioned in the documentary. And I know also, was it Clinton or Bush that had to apologize for these things that were done on people? And some of the experiments, they did things to their brains. They put them through psychological kinds of torture and things like that to try and be able to program human beings to get them to be able to do what they wanted them to do. So it makes you wonder about all these kinds of things. When you think of, the problem is we're born into this world, and like I say before, we become replicants of the system. So we adhere to the system and we believe everything we're told. And whenever someone comes along and questions our reality, because we've been born into that system, it's our, operating system, as it were, our program, we, instantly say, no, that's not possible, that's not true, they wouldn't do things like that, and we rebel against it, cognitive dissonance. And so the problem is trying to get rid of that old way of thinking, that finding out these truths, which for each individual is different. And then understanding, wait a minute, we have to relook at everything and the motives of these things. What about things like the television? We all think that's a harmless thing, but people spend their whole life sitting in front of it and getting fed the replicant information that a lot of us don't even, the people who are actually broadcasting don't realize that they're actually propagating the system, because they've been brought up in it and they're just spouting the same thing that they've been taught. They don't think to question it, and they believe in the sources, like Reuters and all this kind of stuff that they get things from. But we don't know the ulterior motives of a lot of these organizations. I mean, the television is a great mind control tool. It's in everyone's house and everyone watches it. And some of the MK Ultra things would also do with frequencies and way that they could alter people's emotions, the way that they could make people make certain decisions based on, signals and things and wavelength. So we know our bodies do work on those kinds of things, and things like the mobile phone, that, what if that's a product of these experiments of MK Ultra that we all carry around with us, that could be emitting things, we all know that phones can be hacked, we all know all these things, we carry them around with us 24/7, they're right next to us, people sleep with them, and who knows what technology can be used to influence us, make us feel certain ways, make us feel certain thoughts, do certain things. Maybe we're all like sleepers in that agent term, that suddenly we can be awoken and do something. And maybe that might explain why, you get a lot of these terrorists and things like this, that when the parents are presented with this information, assuming they're not lying, they often say things like, oh, he was never like that, he was such a good boy, and I don't understand, and did he get brainwashed and this, that and the other? But maybe it's more simple. His phone just hacked him through frequencies. I don't know if that's even possible. That's too sci-fi, but who knows? But when you watch this program, Minds of Men, on YouTube, it opens your mind to a lot of the things that they, and this is in the 50s, 60s and onwards, that they were doing and finding out. So imagine where they are now with this kind of, do you think they stopped doing it? I mean, the idea of controlling your people, I mean, I know a lot of it's done through subtle ways like government and by teaching us what we're taught. But yeah, and then it made me wonder about all these things, because they were talking about other stuff in there, like getting our DNA and our blood and all that kind of stuff. What about all the vaccines that we're giving? What do we know that they're all really about? I mean, I know, I do worry about when I talk about medical things, because I don't really know, and I don't want to, question things without, that wouldn't be, could be dangerous in that way. But do we know what these vaccines are really about? And all this blood that's taken out of our children, that we see our children, crying their eyes out when they struggle to take this blood when they're born, the vitamin K thing they give when they're born. What are these things all really about? Are they really, it's like they give vaccinations now for, still for polio and diphtheria and stuff like that in the UK, where I don't think that's possible, that, the chances of you catching that must be under 1%. And there's no other statistic where you would, they would, spend billions of pounds on giving these vaccinations to people where there's only 1%, less than 1% chance of you getting it, because a lot of that's to do with the environment. So what is it all really about? And also all this blood, you could think that, do they have all this blood? What are they doing with it all? Are they really doing ethical things? Do they destroy it, or are they keeping it somewhere and doing something with it? I know that's getting on the verges of science fiction, but when you watch this documentary, it makes you wonder about the place that we're in, what's really going on here. So it's worth watching. Anyway, take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.